wondered what happens when a barista stops caring? This story spills the beans. My last glorious day as a Starbucks barista. Here's the story. I used to be a Starbucks barista. We had a woman who would come in every morning and order, I kid you not, a double tall vanilla latte with 3/8 of a pump of vanilla. Not a half pump, 3/8. She even made one of the baristas mark out our bottle with the Sharpie. Every single day, the first cup we would make, no matter who made it, it was always wrong. Either it was too sweet or not sweet enough. So after a while, I began to just pretend to make another drink, pull the steam wand and wave my hands about like a fool behind the machine. I would hand her back the same drink we made her the first time, and it was always perfect the second time, even though it was the same drink. On my last day of work, this woman decides to come in twice that day. She was being over obnoxious and talking on her cell phone about deals and her assistant, and essentially just announcing her importance to everyone in the room. It was 3 in the afternoon in the spring, and the place was filled with teenagers ordering frappuccinos. I had both blenders going and both steam ones going when this woman decided to yell at me. She yelled, "God, I can barely hear myself think." So I replied, "Funny, I can still hear you complaining." If you knew me, you would know I have the perfect facial expression to go with it. I looked like a snarky little punk. I told her that I'd been handing her the same drink every morning for over a year. Kind of embarrassing now that you know, right? 3/8 is half a pump for all intents and purposes here, ma'am. She lost it. She demanded my manager fire me on the spot or she would call corporate and we would lose her business, blah, blah, blah. I hated my manager. My manager was the opposite of a spirit of the rules or law kind of person and really enjoyed making our lives more difficult than they needed to be. I knew that firing me actually reflects quite negatively on his quarterly reviews and knew he wouldn't do that. He told her it was my last day and the best he could do was to send me home early, which would be a reward rather than a punishment since the store was too busy. She proceeded to spend the next 2 hours on hold with corporate outside. Then, when corporate either accidentally hung up on her or told her to shove it, she threw her glasses at me, called me a little jerk in front of a ton of kids, and then ran to her car. To her husband, "So sorry for that night, bro. Totally my fault." There's an edit here. She was offered a gift card, I think, but this lady was universally disliked by employees and customers alike. And a second edit. Thank you so much for the responses. It warms my heart to see people appreciate this story as much as I do. My people, mighty morphing retail rangers. Here's the comments. The overall sentiment from commenters, they're overwhelmingly supporting the barista's actions. They're finding humor and satisfaction in the petty revenge against a difficult customer. Here's some notable comments. "This is why I tip my barista extra. Never know when they'll snap. I'd pay to see that meltdown. Karens deserve every bit of public shaming. The real MVP is the manager who didn't fire you. It's a rare breed." Here's the opinion analysis. It looks like the internet's verdict is unanimous. Karens beware, your latte might come with a side of sass. 90% of the commenters were behind the barista. They praised this clever revenge, and they said the customer deserved the embarrassment. 10% of the commenters expressed concern about professionalism, but even they admitted the story was entertaining. Remember folks, your barista is human too, so treat them right, or you might just get a taste of your own medicine. By the end of this Reddit story, you won't look at personal revenge the same way ever again. You want my girlfriend? Threaten me? Take my whole shabby life. Here's a story. I had a girlfriend. We were bad for each other. And unsurprisingly, she was cheating on me. I found out in a rather dramatic way, and I had a full-on mental breakdown. The guy that she was cheating with had been fed a bunch of lies to keep him from talking to me, and he started threatening me with violence. Long story short, we broke up, she moved in with him, I started therapy. Months went by, and in therapy, I realized I wasn't just busted up about my ex, but my whole life sucked. So I decided to start over completely. New job, new place to live, everything. One day, the moment I got my new job offer, an email landed in my company's inbox. I recognized the name. It's the same guy that threatened me and was now living with my ex. So I referred him to my boss. I told him he was great. I only heard good things, and because I was leaving, they should definitely hire him. Dude comes in for an interview. I'm on the panel. When we're alone, he goes, "Dude, I'm sorry, bro, for all the things I said. Thank you so much for helping me out." So I say, "No sweat. She always had good things to say about you. And I know she had a good picker after all. She chose us both." We chuckled politely. He does okay in the interview and gets the job. The job was a complete nightmare. I'm not exaggerating. This was the worst job I ever had. The new place I was moving to paid twice as much for about a third of the work. I was so relieved to be leaving. A month later, my landlord asks if I know anyone looking for a place. Guess who I recommended? I gave her his number. That apartment was charming on the surface, but it was an absolute disaster once you lived there. I later found out from a buddy at my old job that he jumped on the offer. And that's how I knew. He had my old shabby job, he had my shabby apartment, and he had my cheating ex-girlfriend. I hope he enjoyed my old life more than I did, but somehow I doubt it. Oh, and they broke up 2 months later. Here's the top comments. Imagine that 20 years later, he thanks you for all the great things you helped him turn his life around with. You didn't just give him your girlfriend, you gave him your whole sloppy seconds life. They should be in pro-revenge. Oh, I wish I had a crappy job now. I need someone to refer my worst enemy to it. Here's the opinion analysis. 70% of commenters thought this was the ultimate level of petty revenge. No violence, no aggression, just pure karma. 20% found it hilarious, with many imagining the ex slowly realizing she was living in the exact same misery she had left behind. 10% call it fake, questioning the logistics of how it all lined up. It seems like one man's trash is another man's trash, just delayed. Moral of the story, if you let somebody steal your life, let them steal all of it. One woman thought she was getting a stunning tattoo for free. She ended up with something she'll regret forever. Here's the story. This happened when I was young. I heard it secondhand from my grandmother, who was living with the main character at the time. My uncle's ex-girlfriend was an all-around terrible person. She was an abusive babysitter, she got my uncle into bad crowds and legal trouble. She dabbled in all kinds of substances, and she was also heavily tattooed. A family friend, who's a highly skilled tattoo artist, agreed to do an intricate angel wings piece for her. Huge, detailed, and all across her back. It took multiple sessions over weeks. Although she postponed payment repeatedly, since she was a family friend, he stayed patient. Until the final session, when it became clear she had no money and never intended to pay. Now here's the revenge. Didn't need a collections agency, no demands, no anger. Instead, he smiled and he said, "I'll finish the piece for free," and she was thrilled. The final session was going to make it legendary. Oh, and it was legendary. Right between those beautiful angel wings, running straight up her spine, she now had a massive, detailed, veiny male appendage. She saw it in the mirror and she was livid. But hey, what could she do? She hadn't paid, she wasn't going to pay. She expected hours and hours of work, and she trusted someone with a needle on her back. Hard lesson learned, don't stiff your artists. You'll end up with a stiffy yourself. Here's the notable comments. Most comments find the story hilarious and think the woman deserved it. Some question the legality or ethics of the artist's actions. Comment number 1. Any cover-up would require some sort of conversation, and likely cash up front from any savvy artist. Hey, can you get this D off of me? Don't stiff your artists, because they will stiff you. In this case, quite literally. Opinion analysis. 80% of the commenters found the revenge hilarious and justified, agreeing people shouldn't expect free labor from tattoo artists. 10% felt uneasy about the idea of permanently altering somebody's body without their informed consent, and thought the artist might face legal trouble. But they also admitted, still pretty funny. 5% said it was fake. They questioned how someone wouldn't notice this mid-session. Let's just say, lesson learned the hard way. Moral of the story, if you're not going to pay your tattoo artists, expect them to take some artistic liberty. Now this story proves that revenge is best served with a side of discomfort. Guy tries to claim the armrest, I let him have it, his way. Here's a story. I'm a big lover of the theater and will usually go to whatever Broadway show manages to make its way to my city. I also have the cutest nephew in existence. Sorry people, these are facts. When Disney's The Lion King came around, I decided to treat my little nephew to his first theater show. I wanted everything to be perfect for him, and I managed to snag close orchestra seats right on the aisle. I knew that during the Circle of Life, there's a large elephant puppet that makes its way down the aisle, and I wanted him to be surprised and to be blown away. The seats are very tight, so it was my nephew on the aisle, then me, and then a freaking rude old guy, or frog. So we take our seats, the curtains go up, and then I spent the entire first act getting elbowed in the side by this frog bony elbows. So I was getting elbowed by this frog, and he had to know what he was doing, but it happened over and over again. I wanted to turn street so bad, but I reminded myself that my cute little nephew was there with me, and I didn't want him to see Auntie's street side. So I stewed through the first half, and then I focused on my nephew's pure joy at the show. During intermission, the frog gets up, and I decide that the best way to handle things is discreetly. I should claim the armrest for myself so that my armrest would protect me. Mind made up, I casually place my arm down and focus on my nephew. So frog gets back, sits down, and proceeds to jam his bony elbow under my arm, and he physically throws it off the armrest. He looks at me and he says it's because he was using it before. I went from 0 to oh heck no in 2 seconds and was about to lay into him when I remember my cute little nephew is with me. So breathe, girl, breathe. Suddenly the devil on my shoulder whispers the best idea into my head, and I give an evil grin. He wants the armrest? Fine. He can have it. Here's my revenge plan. Laying my arm perfectly on top of his, as if his arm was the armrest. He looks over at me in shock, and I stare straight back at him, silently daring him to say anything. He pulls his arm back and spends the rest of the second act with his arms crossed, and I sit comfortably, enjoying a wonderful show with my darling nephew. Here's some good comments. Commenters overwhelmingly support the narrator's actions, finding the revenge both clever and satisfying. That frog went unkissed for good reason. Dominance asserted. This is the way. 80% of the commenters agreed with the narrator's revenge and praised the clever and effective approach. 10% of commenters thought the revenge was a bit too harsh and suggested maybe taking a different route. So most commenters cheered on the narrator's armrest takeover and proved that in the theater of life, sometimes you have to hog the spotlight. So this story reminds us that sometimes the smallest victories are also the most satisfying. My wife thinks I take longer in the bathroom than I need, so I make sure she knows it's legit. Here's the story. My wife and I bought our first house shortly after our wedding. Everything went smoothly, and we enjoyed our time as newlyweds. Of course, as the honeymoon phase began to fade, some minor issues started to emerge. For her, the first problem was the typical guy in the toilet problem. So sometimes I spent quite a bit of time on the toilet. It's all legitimate though. It's not like I'm scrolling on my phone. I mean, I also do that, but I'm also doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Anyway, my wife started to pick up on how long I was taking in the bathroom, and she started commenting on it. So this was made worse by some unlucky timing when she would ask if I was coming out of the toilet just as I was standing up and about to flush the toilet. That made it seem as if I was just standing there until she said something and then pretended to flush as if I just finished. For context, I eat a lot. I usually eat about 3,000 calories in a day, give or take a few hundred, and I'm a thin-framed guy, about 160 pounds or 72 kilograms. I'm roughly 6 feet, 5 inches tall. Back then, I was still getting used to the bowel movements that come with eating so much. They tended to happen at random times in varying amounts. My wife though, she didn't believe me. Her diet was way less structured than mine, and she had no idea what was happening in that room for so long. This led to a few arguments, with her accusing me of wasting time in the bathroom on my phone and me insisting that I was indeed pooping. These were playful arguments for the most, but I really wasn't wasting time, and I was actually a little bit offended that she wouldn't believe me. So I decided to get a little revenge and clear my name in the process. The next time I was in the bathroom and my wife was within earshot, I began loudly announcing the following at the right moments. Poop is currently exiting, shortly followed by poop has finished exiting. I would do this 2 or 3 times for however long I was in the bathroom. I would be met with laughter or groaning from the other room, depending on how many times I had made my announcement for that session. After a few days of doing this, she would get grossed out and say, okay, I get it, and I would stop. Since then, I've developed a much more predictable poop schedule, but I no longer get questioned about my activities in the bathroom behind closed doors. What did the audience think? Well, commenters largely praised the narrator's petty revenge. They thought it was hilarious and effective, while some debated the bathroom habits and offered dietary advice. Here's some good comments. I used to live with my in-laws, and they accused me of using all the toilet paper while I was in there. Since we moved out, my wife is buying loads of TP, and oddly, it just keeps stacking up. Long story short, brother-in-law's friend was stealing toilet paper, and they just assumed it was me going buck wild. My partner takes 20 to 30 minutes in the bathroom, at least 2 or 3 times a day. I can't help but be a bit grossed out, especially when I'm the one who cleans the toilets. This had me cracking up. You two sound like fun people, if this is how you get through your arguments. Humor and reason has won the day. 75% of commenters supported the narrator's revenge, applauding its humor and success in proving a point. 15% of you thought it was unnecessary, suggesting dietary changes or more direct communication instead. The majority cheered on his loud proclamations in the bathroom. So when it comes to winning an argument, sometimes you have to just let it all out.